Hey everyone! Welcome back to EduQuest Horizon. In our previous video, we covered the present tense in detail, including simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous tenses. If you missed that, don't worry, check out the link in the description below. Today, we're stepping into the past with a deep dive into the simple past tense. So, let's get started. The simple past tense helps us talk about things that already happened. You'll use it when talking about actions completed in the past, a series of actions, past habits, general truths, or when telling stories. Let's explore each of these. This is the most common use of the simple past tense. When you want to describe an action that was done at a specific time in the past, you use this tense. For example, she visited Paris last summer. Next, it helps to describe a series of actions that happened one after the other. For instance, he woke up, brushed his teeth, and left for work. Each action is sequential and completed in the past. We also use the simple past tense to talk about past habits or actions that were repeated regularly. For example, when I was a child, I played outside every day. This describes something that used to happen frequently. The simple past tense is perfect for stating past facts or generalizations. For instance, dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. This tells us about a fact that was true in the past. It's also commonly used in storytelling and diary entries to describe events and experiences. For example, yesterday, I wrote in my diary about my exciting adventure. It helps bring past events to life. Now let's break down how to form the simple past tense. For affirmative sentences, simply use the past tense verb directly after the subject. For example, she walked to the store. The verb walk becomes walked in the past tense. To form negative sentences, use did not or didn't followed by the base form of the verb. For instance, they did not watch the movie. The base form watch stays the same. For questions, start with did, followed by the subject and the base form of the verb. For example, did you finish the book? Here, did comes first, then the subject, and finish remains in its base form. Let's quickly compare the simple past tense with the present perfect tense. The simple past tense focuses on actions completed at a specific time in the past. For example, I met him last week. The present perfect tense, on the other hand, is used for actions that have relevance to the present. For example, I have met him. It's about connecting past actions with the present. Moving on, let's explore past continuous tense. The past continuous tense, also known as the past progressive tense, is used to describe actions that were ongoing at a specific moment in the past. It helps to set the scene and show that something was in progress. Here's when and why you'll use the past continuous tense. The past continuous tense is perfect for describing actions that were in progress at a particular time in the past. For instance, she was reading a book at 7 p.m. last night. This tells us what was happening continuously at that specific time. It's also used to set the scene or provide background information in a story. For example, while he was cooking dinner, his kids were playing in the living room. The past continuous describes the ongoing action in the background. Use the past continuous tense to describe an action that was interrupted by another action. For instance, I was watching TV when the phone rang. The TV watching was ongoing, and it was interrupted by the ringing phone. It's also used to show two actions happening at the same time. For example, she was studying while her brother was playing the guitar. Both actions were occurring simultaneously in the past. Let's break down how to form the past continuous tense. For affirmative sentences, use the structure subject plus was or were plus verb plus ing. For instance, she was reading a book. Was or were depends on whether the subject is singular or plural. To form negative sentences, use subject plus was or were not, wasn't or weren't, plus verb plus ing. For example, they were not studying. The not makes the sentence negative. For questions, start with the was or were, followed by the subject and the verb plus ing. For instance, were you sleeping? This structure helps us ask about ongoing actions. Let's compare the past continuous tense with the simple past tense. The simple past describes completed actions or events, like I saw a movie. The past continuous describes actions in progress at a specific time, or when another action occurred, like I was watching a movie when it started to rain. It provides context and background. Now, let's dive into another important tense, the past perfect tense. This tense is great for showing the relationship between two events that happened in the past. Ready? Let's get started. The past perfect tense is used to describe an action that was completed before another action in the past. Think of it as the past of the past. For example, by the time she arrived, he had already left. The action of leaving was completed before the action of arriving. Here's when to use the past perfect tense. We use the past perfect tense when one action happened before another action in the past. For instance, she had finished her homework before she went to bed. The past perfect shows that the homework was already completed before going to bed. It's also used to report experiences or events that happened before a certain time in the past. For example, he had never seen the ocean before his trip to California. This tells us about an earlier experience in relation to a specific point in the past. You'll also use the past perfect to describe a sequence of events. For instance, by the time we arrived at the theater, the movie had already started. The past perfect makes it clear that the movie began before the arrival. Let's take a look at how to form the past perfect tense. The good news is that it's simple once you know the pattern, it's easy to use. Affirmative sentences follow this pattern. Subject plus had plus past participle. For example, they had eaten dinner before 8 p.m. The verb had shows the tense, and the past participle of the verb eat is eaten. For negative sentences, we simply add not after had. The formula is subject plus had not, or hadn't, plus past participle. For instance, she hadn't seen the movie before yesterday. To form questions, start with had, followed by the subject and the past participle of the verb. For example, had they finished the project by the deadline? This makes it clear you're asking about something that happened before a specific time. Let's compare the past perfect with the simple past. The simple past describes actions that happened in the past, like I finished my homework. The past perfect is used when you want to emphasize that one action happened before another. For example, I had finished my homework before I went out to play. The past perfect shows the sequence clearly. Past perfect continuous tense, a powerful tool for describing actions that were ongoing over time in the past before another action or time point. Let's dive in. The past perfect continuous tense is used to describe actions that were happening continuously over a period of time in the past, and were still happening up until another point or action in the past. For example, she had been studying for hours before the test began. The past perfect continuous is perfect for talking about actions that were happening continuously over a period of time, and then another action happened in the past. For example, she had been working for 5 hours when the meeting started. The action of working was continuous before the meeting began. This tense also describes actions that were interrupted by another past event. For instance, they had been jogging for 30 minutes when it started raining. The action of jogging was ongoing, but was interrupted by the rain. We can also use the past perfect continuous to explain the cause of something in the past. For example, the kitchen was a mess because she had been cooking all afternoon. Here, the mess in the kitchen is explained by the continuous action of cooking. Now let's take a look at how we form the past perfect continuous tense. It's built with the formula subject plus, had been plus verb plus ing. Let's break it down. In affirmative sentences, we use the formula subject plus had been plus verb plus ing. For example, he had been studying for hours before the exam. The action of studying was continuous and happened before the exam. To form negative sentences, we simply add not after had. The formula is subject plus hadn't been plus verb ing. For instance, they hadn't been sleeping well before the trip. This shows the action wasn't happening continuously. To form questions, we start with had, followed by the subject, then been, and the verb in its ing form. For example, had she been working for long before you arrived? This structure lets us ask about the duration of an action in the past. Some common time expressions used with the past perfect continuous tense are 1.4 hours, 2, since last week, 3, before the storm, 4, by the time. These phrases help indicate the duration or the specific time frame of an ongoing action. I hope you've now understood how to use all four past tenses: the simple past, past continuous, past perfect, and past perfect continuous, and will be able to use them correctly in your daily life. Stay tuned for our next lesson on future tenses, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep learning.